Old man Woody likes the crooked cock. Presented out in the open.
So an interesting scenario that comes to mind for me, like I knew a girl who had a friend who was also a female, and she had been molested by her father when she was very young, and as a result, she didn't bathe anymore. As an adult, she no longer bathed, and she would stay filthy all the time. Now, the reason she did this was it had become a defensive mechanism for her as a preteen to prevent her father from molesting her.
Yeah, I've seen Oz.
I guess it's a bit like that as well. But this is literally like a coping mechanism that she had fallen into, was becoming filthy and smelly so that her father wouldn't molest her. And it makes me just wonder now that I think about this individual, not to really give him it. If he hears this, he's going to be like, oh, yeah, all right, yeah. Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah, that's what happened.
that ship has fucking sailed for that guy. But like, I think wearing diapers up until you're like 13 or 12 or whatever it is, that's sometimes indicative of having been molested as a kid, isn't it? Like bedwetting until an older age. Not that any of this excuses it, but it's just curious.
Well, I know he's claimed that he had mental issues, and I think that's pretty obvious when you're listening to the guy. Aside from just like autism, we're not just talking like autism or Asperger's or something like that. He told multiple friends, and this is consistent throughout the years, that he had a form of schizophrenia. I don't remember my like entry-level intro psych classes and stuff, but I vaguely remember that there were two types of that, and one was more of an internal type, and people with schizophrenia could be prone to not wanting to wash. They were kind of introverted. They could fall into like deep depressions. So I mean, maybe that's like an affect of that. Maybe that's part of it. But he tried to grab anything he could, and he was using I can't remember the guy's name, but the Virtuous Pedophile thing came from a salon writer who wrote all these articles saying, I'm not a monster, I'm a pedophile. But then it turns out that, okay, you are a bit of a monster because you're more than just a pedophile. You're getting into some things that are pretty underhanded. Salon pulled the articles because of it. And that's the guy Ross is going to. He was holding him up as a prime example of a virtuous pedophile. Somebody afflicted, but he's a good guy, but turns out he's not a good guy.
Who could have seen that coming?
I know, it's a shock.
Do you mean to imply there are no virtuous pedophiles?
That was my next question. I wanted to poll the group here. Do we think that there can be a virtuous pedophile?
I think there can be.
No.
So here's my thing. I think there are people who feel a pull to maybe a drug they used to be addicted to, right? There are ex-alcoholics, right? People who are like, man, this is the kind of situation where I would have drank before, but I know what happens, and that's not for me anymore. I think there are people who do that with all kinds of drugs. I imagine there are people who feel the pull towards pedophile and just say, no, like, I get how hot 4-year-olds are, but it's not for me.
I feel like it's almost a layer deeper, though, because you may have a predisposition for alcoholism, but it's still like a choice you're making, like to get into it. That sexual attraction that a pedophile has for children, like if that is ingrained, it seems like there's really no way for them to truly combat it, and it's almost going to be only a matter of time until something happens.
I'm just cautious about nailing people to the wall as thought police, right? Action police, fucking line them up and shoot them, right? But thought police, is that against the law?
Would you want one of these recovering pedophiles in your neighborhood at your child's school? Like what if he's at parkour with Colin, and he's the one who grabs the kids by their waist and gives them a little boost so they can make the jumps?
Is he a good waist grabber? I don't know.
I bet he's a great.
You can see his fingers trembling.
He's been
with
thinking
excitement.
about it every night for months.
He's got an emergency Tate move just in case he doesn't make it.
I don't like how the instructor has to go sit down after every time he helps.
No, I guess it sounds like this guy needs to be institutionalized, right? From what I'm hearing, he hasn't done anything bad, but he's really headed down the wrong road. And
yeah, he's throwing up every red flag you can. I do kind of tend to agree with you about the thought police thing. I mean, we're talking about two individuals. Like with Nick, that was somebody who definitely acted on it. Ross is somebody that's almost guaranteeing that he's going to act on it by making statements about wanting to hurt kids. Are there virtuous pedophiles? I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that have all sorts of really negative aspects of who they are that try their hardest to fight against them. I'm sure there are people that probably take it to the limit, people that get chemically castrated, people that do whatever they think they need to do to prevent themselves from hurting somebody else. But Ross is definitely not one of them. I think this guy is this guy is dangerous. I know people have contacted the police department. I called up a non-emergency number to report him. People have talked to different sheriff's department because one of the issues is, where is he exactly? You kind of had a general idea of where he is, but you don't know exactly where he is, and how do you alert who you need to alert? People try dropping tips to the FBI. People talk to his family. So it's one of those things where, I just really don't want to read a news story 2 months from now and be like, that's the guy that I was making videos on, and now here he is hurting kids in a classroom. I mean, I think if you have that in your nature, at the very least, if you want to claim to try to be a virtuous pedophile and fight against the nature of it, don't work with kids. I think would be a very simple first step. Yeah.
This is not the virtuous pedophile that we just described. I was quickly reminded of that movie, The Woodsman, with Kevin Bacon, where he gets out of prison after 12 years, convicted pedophile, and he tries to stay away from any temptation. He tries to get his life back together. He didn't go get a job at a school, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not what you do. This man should be putting himself in an environment that is completely free of children, where children aren't even allowed.
A nursing home.
A brewery, like maybe you and there's probably an alcoholic somewhere working at a brewery. You and that guy swap lives, all right? Like both of you are going to be better off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like get him in there with the kids. He'll be a little tipsy at first, but somebody will watch him.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
I guess it's more about the precautions they're taking to keep themselves away. Like if they're like, oh, I'm a pedophile, but I'm going to go live in rural North Dakota, and be a oil rig worker where it's only adults, then you're trying at least. Like I'm going to be wary of you because you've admitted you're a pedophile. But if you're like, oh, I'm recovering, I don't work at a school or anything, I work at a bank, and it's like, oh, you live 3 miles from an elementary school, like that you shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to be driving through school zones and stuff. Like if I were afflicted with something like that, I would have to.
Speed limit's 20, not 3. Just driving slowly.
I feel like
dropped your ball.
The only truly virtuous pedophiles are the ones who take the route of either chemical castration. Jesus, Taylor, there's another option: chemical castration, or they do literally put themselves in a position where there just aren't any children. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one. An oil rig in North Dakota seems to get the job done, honestly. But how long is it before like the boss's daughter comes to visit or something like that? And you're, I don't know. It seems like
too much money. They're going to be popping up Chuck E. Cheese franchises around, getting too confident.
Having a pedophile on your workforce or in your life seems like befriending someone who has a cougar as a pet. Like, oh yeah, he's friendly with me. Well, the first time your girlfriend comes over and she's wearing the wrong perfume, she's going to need a face transplant, right? Like, it's not worth the risk.
Well, and one of the weird things that factors into this, and I did a video on this maybe 3 or so weeks back, was the kerfuffle that happened at Facebook, where they put up a poll asking users, would you be okay if men were asking young girls for erotic pictures? That was somebody in the PR marketing, you just slip that into the survey data. Or you've got stuff like YouTube, where they had just all sorts of things. I mean, they had the massive culling of channels that were really bizarre stuff. I mean, it was a lot of preteens that were wearing diapers and sucking on pacifiers and just doing some really bizarre stuff, toy channels and that kind of stuff. There was the YouTube search algorithm that auto-completed something to how to have sex with your kids when you entered how to. So, it's just, I think maybe some of the tech firms out there might want to just, give it an extra look over before they start surveying user bases about sending erotic pics from teenagers or, looking up kids dressed up naked or how to have sex with them.
You use a song that you're not supposed to use, you're down in 30 seconds. You can make an Elsa in Spider-Man video where it's like 2 adults dressed up and it's like, oh, Elsa performs fake blowjob on Spider-Man. It's like 60 million views. Been up for 3 months. Spider-Man is naughty, gets a spanking from
at least 100,000 of those views are me.
Then that's still far too many. But yeah, that is a curious trend with the tech world.
I ended on that note. I love the wordplay.
That was the best shit I've ever heard.